hello and thank you. We are joined today by the first chairperson of Global Cleveland, Mr. Baiju Shah, who is the president and CEO of the Greater Cleveland Partnership, the greatest chamber of commerce in the United States. And Baiju is someone without whom Global Cleveland would not exist, either in form or idea. And Baiju, we're just so grateful to you. I hope you know how much we appreciate you and we treasure you. What first drew you to the idea of Global Cleveland? You were working on this before there was even a name or an office, and you were there, over 15 years ago. What was that first piece that made you do that, and then what led you to want to take on the role of being our very first chairperson?
Yeah, so Joe, first, thanks for having me join this conversation. And thank you and your team and your board for all the incredible work and leadership you show in our community. Uh, what drew me in originally, it's maybe a confluence of a couple things, right? So first, yeah, I always cared deeply about economic development and civic development of Greater Cleveland. And it was clear, and it is clear still today, how important immigrants have been to Cleveland's history, Cleveland's present, and how immigrants are critical to Cleveland's future. And I use Cleveland in a liberal sense here. It's the entire region, it's not just the city. So that drew me in right away, is to sort of the recognition of we needed to do more once I saw the data, especially coming from a high tech background. There was data that was being published in the late 2000s of the preponderance of startups in the high tech sectors that were being founded by immigrants or children of immigrants. And that was critical, we knew, to Cleveland's ongoing economic growth and revitalization. So, how we could encourage more of that here was another kind of thread of the draw. And then the third is the personal story. I'm a son of immigrants myself, individuals who were warmly welcomed into the Cleveland community back in the early 70s, and have always felt that the immigrant community here is one that is important and needs to be strengthened, and that we all have a responsibility for welcoming that next group of immigrants that are arriving from whatever part of our planet to our city, so they too can become, anchored residents that are contributing to our community and enriching us through their presence.
Wow, we really appreciate that. Those are powerful words, and ones that we take very personally and professionally and seriously. There have to be memories that stand out from your time as chair, Beju. Anytime, the founder, the
Yeah,
organization starts, it has, so many moments. And if you could talk a little bit about,
sure.
what made you think that, this was going to work, and when did you see most clearly that impact in action?
Well, I have to give a lot of credit, first of all, to it's you never do anything alone. You know that, I know that, Joe, that it's always a broad group of people. And I think back to sort of it's probably about 2009, 2010. I have to think about exactly what year we started these conversations. Certainly, Albert Ratner is a force in Global Cleveland. Stephen Hoffman, who at the time was the head of the Federation, now the chair of the Mandel Foundation, was a force. And I remember clearly having a breakfast with the two of them and talking about why immigration was so important, what the experience had been, not only historically, but in recent history, in particular, with different groups that the Federation had been engaged with, and what we needed to do as a community to ensure that we were becoming that place and that beacon once again for people from all shores. So that was a moment, and I think it was maybe at that breakfast that I was voluntold to do this, right? Which Albert can do, Steve Hoffman can do, others can do. And they just said, you seem like you've got a lot of ideas. Why don't you jump in and help organize this? So that was the one moment. The second, moment was at that time, there was a lot of uh, maybe questions about how will political figures react to something that is focused on immigrants, because there's always that tension, as you know, between serving residents that are here today versus welcoming others into our community. So resolving that tension, helping everyone recognize that this was not a competition. that this is something that truly does lift all boats and adds to our community, not only from an economic perspective, but from a cultural perspective, and strengthens our ability to attract other individuals, immigrant or non-immigrant, to our region. Was important, and to also make sure that this was a nonpartisan issue from the beginning. Right? That was really important. At the time, we had Mayor Frank Jackson and Governor John Kasich. And I want to give both of them incredible credit for immediately jumping on board. So we had a Republican governor, a Democratic mayor. Both of them embraced Global Cleveland's vision and mission and recognized how important it was to our region and to our state. And in many ways, how Cleveland was a leader in the state at naming this important approach for economic development and population gain. So that was maybe a second moment. Third, Dan Walsh. Dan at the time was the president of Huntington Bank for this region. And Dan was probably the first corporate leader to really kind of put his name on the line and his institution's name on the line for supporting Global Cleveland, which became important to then recruiting other corporate leaders and other health institutions and universities to become a part of that initial formation, not only supporting the mission from a cheerleading perspective, but providing financial support that was required to get the organization off the ground. And maybe my final memory, and I still keep it in my office, it's actually over there in the corner, is a frame of our Global Cleveland kickoff party. Right? We had a major celebration in downtown Cleveland, a band of largely volunteers, leaders from different sectors that had come together, been a part of shaping a vision for what this organization could be and what this region could achieve through it, that then sort of announced it to the broader public at a major event. I want to say probably in 2010. I'd have to go and look at the frame. Maybe it might have been 2011. But just remembering the feeling of that room, because all of a sudden you had this convergence of political leadership, corporate leadership, and leadership of immigrant communities throughout Greater Cleveland, all in one room, all embracing the shared vision, the shared success, the sense of community. Those are moments that I treasure, because for immigrant communities and for son of immigrants, it's a point of arrival when you're being embraced by business and political leadership across the entire region.
That's a very vivid memory that you painted, and something. Thank you for sharing that. Baiju, your current role at the Greater Cleveland Partnership is really our regional leader, and immigration is something that positively impacts cities and counties, but you're seeing this from a regional perspective. How is that, and how do you think the organization that you founded has a unique role in the fulfillment of that regional mission?
Sure. So, our focus is on growing Greater Cleveland's growth and prosperity, and we define Greater Cleveland as far as the eye can see. It's, Sandusky to Ashtabula, Cleveland down to Canton, probably farther stretches than that. To drive success right now, where we are today is very different than where we were in 2010 when we started Global Cleveland. We're at a unique position, not unique, we're at a new moment, let's call it, for Greater Cleveland, where businesses are growing faster than the people they need to support their growth. And so we are continually being challenged as a region by a very low level of unemployment and a need to bring individuals into our region at all skill levels. This is not about a singular type of job. It's really across the board, and it's from small businesses to large businesses. What we've seen over the last couple of years is that our population has been growing as a region, driven by foreign migration. Individuals who are not originally from the United States that are moving to this region to participate in economic opportunity, to participate in educational opportunity. That's been one of the drivers of our slight population growth. We need that to be even stronger, especially given the demographic realities of the United States. You're going to do a video with Albert Radner. I guarantee you the first 5 minutes are going to be about demographics. He's been studying this for at least 20 years, maybe his entire career as a real estate developer, understanding populations, ebbs, flows, fertility rates, births minus deaths, migrations, all of that sort of stuff. And he's been clear from the beginning that the only path to success for not only our region, but for regions across the United States, given those realities, is you've got to be a place that's welcoming for migration, right? And whether that starts in Cleveland or it's individuals that move to the United States first and then find their way to Cleveland, that is critical to our region's success. You asked then sort of how are we doing and what does Global Cleveland so GCP is an economic strategy organization. We benefit from the leadership of our CEOs that lean in on our broad mission. But the execution of our strategies depends on strong partnerships with organizations that are purpose built and focused and wake up every day on elements of that strategy. Global Cleveland is exactly that as it relates to welcoming international individuals, connecting them to the resources and the opportunities that they need to get situated here to become strong residents and strong citizens of our community. So we rely on Global Cleveland to execute the work of this strategy and to assemble the whole panoply of partners that you've got in that execution. We also count on Global Cleveland to highlight to us when there's opportunities for us to be doing more. And whether that us doing more is our companies. And I can think, Joe, of partnerships where you guys have been advocates and then execution partners on things such as international hiring, in particular of students. Right now, we partner through the Cleveland Talent Alliance, where Global Cleveland is delivering that education to employers so that they have an understanding of the true visa status of students that are coming through our wonderful educational institutions. But you're also pointing out things that we may need to change at the local and at the state level to be even more welcoming of international talent. And you bringing us those ideas and us lending you our support hopefully will help move more and more of those things into being so that we become that region that becomes easier and easier for immigrants to settle.
Thank you for that. Baiju, your experience as a leader and a chairperson, is pretty exemplary. You gave a lot of insight to the organization. You likely gained some as well in your leadership role. How would you share that with future leaders, people that you're, passing the baton to fulfill your legacy of leadership within the Global Cleveland context?
Um, I think that's a hard question, Joe. I think every board member, every board leader, comes in at a different moment, both what's going on with the organization, but also what's the opportunity given macro conditions. How you approach enabling the team and supporting the team to achieve it is going to be different for each of those things. I think it's important for board members to realize that they are champions on the mission. They need to be champions of the organization, and they have to figure out ways to productively enable the team and the organization to execute its mission. That can be through supporting access to companies, gathering of resources, advocating for policies, mentoring and guiding team members, getting engaged in events. There's a whole range of ways for board members to be productively engaged, but maybe what I always sort of ask of myself and ask of people that are joining boards is, how do you want to serve? Right? Define a couple ways that you want to serve the mission of the organization and articulate that. Some of it might not make sense, and you, as the CEO, will guide board members to say, well, that sounds great, but that's not exactly how we do things. But I think board members should show up with the servant mindset so that they are able to support the mission of the organization, and connect with the individuals on the board. I mean, I think one of the things I enjoy about serving on boards, especially of civic organizations, is you meet a cross section of the community that you don't typically see in your professional day-to-day life. And these are extraordinary individuals that you've gathered on your board. They've got great personal stories. They've got incredible professional and personal expertise, and you can benefit from getting to know them. You're going to be enriched by getting to know them. And it's just one of those opportunities that I don't think enough board members take advantage of on the boards that they serve, is to really get to know people as people rather than just showing up at meetings.
Really appreciate that insight. Beju, what is a moment of optimism you feel with regard to Global Cleveland today or in the past 15 years? And if you were to be our chairperson today, what is the biggest impact, that the goal, the aim that you would want this organization that you began to focus on as we look forward to the years ahead?
Yeah, I think, look, I think the organization should have a lot of optimism given the success that we've had as a region in attracting more and more international individuals to our region. The numbers are ultimately what the mission is going to be measured by. We want to express that feeling of welcome, which, back in the early days when we were starting Global Cleveland, we talked about both primary migration but also secondary migration. So primary migration is when someone shows up here in a first instance, but that the real power of population growth is secondary migration. It's when they invite their friends and family members here because they've found the region to be not only welcoming, but a place where they can see their future and their family's future. And that's the story of, I think, the growth of Cleveland's immigrant communities. It's certainly the story of our family. My parents were the primary immigrants to Cleveland. But because when my parents settled here and found it to be a place that was welcoming and productive for them and for our family, they invited their siblings, my father's siblings, to come to Cleveland, and my father's siblings' children. And all of a sudden, we've got a very large, group of the Shah family here in Cleveland. And I think that story repeats itself again and again and again through every immigrant community. So that secondary migration is really important as we think about how we continue to grow our population in our region. So when I look ahead, I think there's a lot that Global Cleveland should celebrate. I think the other thing that Global Cleveland should celebrate is 15 years later, the embrace of the mission of Global Cleveland is even stronger than it was in 2010. It is not something that, in spite of national debates, unfortunate debates that occur in the national dialogue, our community in our region has not backed away from the value of immigration and immigrants to our community. That is a very important element. And I think that is something that, Joe, you and the team deserve a lot of credit for. But to know that your both business community and your political community, as long with maybe the broader community, continues to overwhelmingly embrace this mission is a mark of huge success given the dynamics that we've been experiencing in some of the national discourse. So where would I love to see Global Cleveland go, or what, I think it's really important for every organization in Cleveland to push for incredibly aspirational standards and goals. I think, we all get excited by things that seem ambitious, maybe heroic, maybe sometimes unachievable, right? That's what starts to galvanize everyone in a way that's a little bit different than just sort of, this next year we're going to do 5% better than we did last year. So identifying what those next peaks are that we've got to go and conquer as a community, right? Whether those are numerical goals, whether it's elements of the welcoming infrastructure that we need to build, other aspects. I don't presume to have those answers, but my push on Global Cleveland would be help us have incredible aspiration and ambition for what immigrants could mean for our region, and give us some aspirational and ambitious achievements that we ought to be striving towards as a community. That's going to rally all of us to say that is literally the mountain we need to climb, and we're going to climb it together. That's what I'd want for Global Cleveland to be able to articulate to us.
Wow. Thank you, Baiju. Final question in a sentence or phrase. What does the organization that you founded, Global Cleveland, mean to you?
Wow. In a sentence or a phrase. I should have pre-read your questions, Joe. I would have been prepared for
Oh,
something.
this is great. You're
So,
phenomenal. This is exactly what we wanted.
to me, Global Cleveland's very personal. It's the story of my family. It's the community that welcomed not only my family, my parents, but myself, my sister, children of immigrants that were navigating kind of that bicultural existence that immigrant children always navigate. So, Global Cleveland to me is essential to the success of Greater Cleveland. It's personal because it's been the story of our family. Uh, I want to make it the story of Greater Cleveland once again. We often talk about sort of Greater Cleveland in its heyday being that place that, I forget the exact percentage numbers, but it was in the high 20s, maybe 30% of the population was from other shores that had arrived here because of the economic opportunity that was being presented to us in the form of the Industrial Revolution and the boom of all of the enterprises in that era. And we're once again at that stage where businesses are booming. And I'm hoping that Global Cleveland is a way that we continue the success of not only those enterprises, but really the success of the region. And it really is that rich array of people bringing with them their histories, their cultures, their traditions, their foods that enriches all of our lives by them being present as our neighbors.
Thank you, Baiju Shah, CEO, President of Greater Cleveland Partnership, founding spirit and partner and rocket launcher of Global Cleveland. Your leadership is why we are here today. It is our past, our present, and our
Uh,
future. We thank you just for your voice and your vision, Baiju. We thank you for your humanity, and we are just so eternally grateful to you for giving us the chance
well,
to try to make this thing work.
Well, Joe, you guys have done an incredible job. I am extremely proud as board honorary board member at this point, emeritus, I think, is my official title, and to have played a role, right? And I love supporting what you guys are doing. We've talked about how important it is, and we want to just keep on keeping on everything that's great. Do you want to see my memento in my desk?
Yeah,
Let me bring it over.
I love this. I love this so much. I love that you have it right there.
It's right here. It's a proud moment. Let's see. I was off by a year. It was May 24th, 2011.
Oh my
That was our
goodness.
launch party
Wow.
way back
Wow.
when. So it was
Wow.
fantastic. A great group of individuals that came together at that moment and got things started. And you guys have carried it to places that we could have never imagined. So thank you.
Baiju Shah, wonderful partner, leader, visionary, someone that we follow and love. Thank you very much. Thank you for being part of this and onward and upward, Baiju.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.